Kristen Johnson.
And we're off to a little bit of a late start. We apologize to our guest, Dr. Joseph Gallenberger, and you, our kind audience, because we had a little technical difficulty, um, which not too unusual for us, but it was very, very odd today. Where we're starting late, we're probably going to get right into things and start talking to Joseph. Dr. Joe Gallenberger is a clinical psychologist with 30 years of experience as a therapist. In 1992, he began to investigate psychokinesis, or PK, the ability to influence matter using the energy of directed consciousness. This unique energy is useful in healing and manifestation. Gallenberger scientifically confirmed PK in university laboratories and has taught PK in over 150 worldwide workshops, such as Inner Vegas Adventure, and I'm going to plug the book here, Inner Vegas Adventure, where students achieve dramatic healing, strong influence over dice and slot machines, and many powerful manifestations at home. Welcome, Joe.
Welcome. Thank you
Hi,
again.
how are you? Yeah.
Good. We're,
Great.
we're
Thank
doing
you.
okay. We're a little bit of a panic. Our camera's disappearing. We got crazy stuff going on today, but welcome to the show. Welcome to Bigfoot and the Bunny, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Sure, thank you for having me.
We'd like to start out with asking you how and when did you get involved um, in psychokinesis?
I work as a clinical psychologist, but I also have been a trainer at Monroe Institute for 30 years. And when I was up there working with some programs, uh, found that if somebody, say, had a headache, I could touch their shoulder and the headache might go away.
We might need that.
And then later, yeah, later we were working with the program and to practice some meditation techniques we were using, we were having a game of dice. And I found my hands getting really warm, my heart wide open, connected to spirit, grounded to the earth well. And the same mental state or consciousness state as for healing, and found with that I could roll what I wanted on the dice. So I rolled 7 sevens in a row, for example.
Wow.
And that intrigued me because that's studyable. We know exactly what the statistics are on dice. And it seems, since it was the same energy as healing energy and manifestation energy, it was something I wanted to pursue. So I went to Princeton Engineering Anomalous Research Labs as a subject and left there knowing PK was real and that I could do it, because we got some results at 30,000 to 1 by chance or better. Uh, then I wanted to get a black belt in PK, meaning I had to find a place to practice. And Las Vegas was perfect because we again know the statistics on dice and slot machines. So I started going out there by myself and found it very possible to do in a very positive psychological state. And so pretty quickly began to bring people out with me, and we were at 99 workshops when COVID hit. So we're waiting to do our 100th, hopefully this fall, of the Inner Vegas Adventures. And then I wrapped back around to Monroe Institute and started a 6-day program there called Manifestation and Creation Squared, where we explore PK. And I still work with laboratories now, University of Virginia. For example, last experiment was 48 seconds of doing psychokinesis, 48 seconds rest, on and off for 100 trials with 128 lead EEG on your head to see what's going on in the brain when people do this. And we got significance on the PK and also interesting brainwave patterns. So continue to explore this on a science basis as well as a practical basis.
That's super interesting. And I know one of my questions for you, it was something I was reading in the book where you talked about being at the Monroe Institute back in, I guess it was around 1991, and you got yourself connected to an EEG neuromapper for that brain mapping. And there were some differences there, right? So as far as what an average person maps what parts of the brain light up, if you will, in there.
Hmm.
Most people have a resting occipital alpha wave pattern toward the back of the head with a narrow field of attention, but you had a resting temporal gamma wave pattern, which is wide field attention. Could you tell us a little bit about that? We're actually very interested in brain mapping and
Yes.
what goes on in the brain when PK or
Yeah.
psychic experiences occur. And we have a background in paranormal and some other things. You can see we got some creepy stuff behind us and all that. We think
Mhm.
these things are all related. Whether people
Connected.
manifest
Yes.
ghosts and that kind of
Yes.
stuff, or whether there's something there. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that mapping?
Yes. So at the time that they did the analysis there, I was the first one they saw with that pattern. Since then, there's been quite a few. You could look at this almost as some people having a wide field attention. They may even be labeled attention deficit disorder, but it tends to be also associated with psychic feeling uh, functioning because you do have a wider field of attention. Um, it would be oversimplification to just say it was gamma in the temporal lobes, but that can be part of it. There can be synchronous beta in the frontal lobes, numbers of interesting patterns. And we find Monroe Institute is a place where they have developed a meditation system that easily changes brainwave patterns for people called HemiSync. And so we use that up there for most people within 10 minutes, they can be deeply relaxed. 15, 20 minutes, they're in a highly altered state where they might be in touch with guidance or be able to do PK tasks, those kind of things. Um, I'm going to back up a little because I want to set a good theme for the show. A lot of people talk about PK as being a controlling mental things with your mind. I think the mind is like a steering wheel in the car. It sets direction for intent, but the car goes nowhere without gas. And I found in my work that the best gas you can put in the PK car is the energy of unconditional love. It's very positive spiritually, psychologically. So somebody could do PK out of great anger or agitation states, much like a woman, lifting a car off of a child,
Hmm.
might be in an altered state of consciousness. But for doing this on a consistent, regular basis, we use energy of the deepest love, kind of an agape in the Greek term, love for all beings, feeling one with everything, including the spoon for bending metal, the dice for rolling dice. And with that, we've had 1.6 billion to one by chance on roulette. We've had about 200 million that won by chance on slot machines, and on dice, very spectacular results over the time. So when my guess is, because we've studied brain maps of people doing all kinds of things, that many people doing PK may have a different look in the brain. There'd be different patterns associated with high altered states in everything that we've studied so far. So you can't really say gamma equals PK or something like that. It's just not that simple.
There
So
were just some consistencies, and when you use the hemi-sync techniques and things like binaural
mm,
beats, I guess, do you does it
yes,
does the can you actually see the changes in the neuromapping?
yes. So if you are being real time neural mapped, usually what we see is binaural beat technology is relying on putting sound in one ear like 100 cycles, the other ear 104, and the brain goes into the difference. So in my example, 4-cycle rhythm. So the first thing you see on a brain map would be synchrony between the left and right hemispheres begin to beat together. Okay. And then they move into the level of brainwave pattern that we might be aiming for. We were aiming for a deep delta, 4 cycle per second. You could be showing a sleep pattern. Your body could be snoring, and yet you would have awareness because we're also adding some beta and a late alert signal. So in the Monroe system, one thing that's sophisticated about it is there may be patterns of up to 20, 28 different patterns within a half-hour meditation. And so they're constantly shifting through delta, theta, gamma, alpha, as opposed to a lot of the programs you could get online that might have pure alpha, for example. And with that, you can get some very interesting states of consciousness going.
That's super interesting. I was really impressed with some of the testing that you did in the Princeton labs. One of the tests being that they had two different pictures, and I think one was a cat and the other was like a pyramid. And if you focused on one, there was a random number generator. The pixels, would go one way, for yes or no, 0, and the other way for 1. And you could influence it and actually create the picture instead of it being a blur of two pictures.
Yeah, so that experiment is called ArtReg. They've used that a lot because it is of a pretty high interest to people. Like you can select two different things. And I, went, the computer's picking ones and zeros for one for, say, the cat picture, 0 for the pyramid. And you get into an excited state, think about how much you love cats and go, here, kitty, 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 and get your heart wide open. And you begin to see that cat come locked in clearer and clearer. And that one was, I think, 30,001 by chance when I did it. They also had the height of a fountain bubbles by random hydrodynamic law. So the column height of the water keeps changing. And the task was to make the water column high. Of course, you can't touch this. This is all behind glass, lit by laser light. It's real pretty. And then 15 minutes high, 15 minutes low, 15 minutes control. And we got a z-score of 12.97. 1.96 is once in 100 by chance. And so 12.97 being it's an exponential scale is pretty much off the charts.
Absolutely.
The nice thing, that random number generator that was in ArtReg, slot machines have pseudo-random number generators. So I've had success visualizing a royal flush in hearts, 10 queen, 10 jack, queen, king, ace of hearts in sequence. And they've gotten that in the first pull out there, which is 140,000 to 1 by chance.
Wow.
And the nice thing in Vegas is you get rewarded with money. In the lab, it's actually kind of boring,
Right.
to do 48 seconds PK on and off for 100 trials when they've already spent a half hour putting 128 lead EEG on your head takes a lot of motivation. And so being a psychologist rather than many of them were engineers, I looked a lot at motivational set in the laboratory experiments. And Princeton had gotten wonderful results, 12.5 million trials. They got significance, but they were using mostly unmotivated undergraduates who may have drank the night before for extra credit, to make up a story, and not really telling them what's possible. And so I was wondering more, what would Qigong masters do, energy healers, people that have some familiarity with energy sending, energy receiving, we would maybe get a more strong effect. And I think that tends to be true, though most people can do this. It's very natural, but just because it's natural doesn't mean it's easy. Chris and Kristen say, I said, well, we're all getting sleepy. Let's go to bed. We're having a party and now we're all going home. And you get home and you say, gee, I'm tired. I think I'll get in bed. And then you think of something else and you fall asleep, right? It's kind of an intention, let go. But if I said, go on TV tomorrow night and I'll give you $10 million if you can fall asleep in 20 minutes with 100 million people watching you, you might have trouble, right? Because now
Most
it's
definitely.
struggle, effort, self-consciousness. And that's what tends to get in the way with the PK. If I say, here's a spoon to a kid, a child and I say, you can bend it, they may easily bend it. If you give it to an adult, they get into their mind and go, I don't know if it can be, I don't know if, and underneath, I won't be able to do it as I will be able to do it, which would change their whole belief system about the world and their sense of power. So it gets loaded up pretty quickly. So our main thing is we have to get people into joy, lovingness, gratitude, feelings of abundance, playfulness, get out of their heads. So when we're at the dice table, if we all feel one with the universe, we're grounded to the earth, we're in that present moment, we're having a great time, hearts are open, we tend to get rewarded with money within seconds. If you go into greed, fear, ego, you tend to get punished by withdrawal of money. So in the Vegas Adventure Workshops, we found really in 3 days we could train somebody into a more enlightened way of living, almost like you would train a dog to sit by reward, um, because you'd get rewarded if you did better, and then you'd get to learn what that state was like. So it's been an interesting journey. I've been on it for 20 plus years, and I wrote about it in that Inner Vegas book you were going to hold up, Chris. Well, I get
Can they
a
I
see
love
sip
it.
of water.
Can they see it?
It's an excellent book.
It is?
I'm so thoroughly enjoying this. I noticed
Thank
you
you.
in the beginning of the book, you talked about some of your childhood experiences as well. It wasn't just at the
Hmm.
Monroe Institute that this all started. You had a
Yes.
history of PK like experiences and unusual experiences. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, more telepathic with my mom, and also quite a bit of out of body travel as a child. And then in college, began to do out of body in more of a controlled way. Part of that was motivated that I was in a motorcycle accident at 21 and ended up in skeletal traction 6 months and then a body cast 6 months. So I didn't have much to do and there in the hospital and began to practice out of body. Also, I was in psychology as a program, but one of the teachers came from the college when I was in the hospital and taught me Eastern religions and philosophy under independent study. So I
Oh,
got some more familiarity that way. When I was real young, maybe 6, 7 years old, I used to have what I call oneness experiences where I'd be just a point of consciousness at one with everything. And I didn't talk to people about it. I thought they might put me away somewhere. But being raised Christian, I began to read a lot about Catholic mystics and things like that, which motivated me to go to a monastery when I was 14 for 2 years. Um, and I liked the meditation contemplation, but I didn't like much else about the monastery. So out I came and back into regular life where you could date and things like that that I enjoyed.
Sure, a little bit more fun and
A little more
especially
earthy.
yeah, a little more. Sure,
what were your childhood experiences like?
that's weird.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
You did
throwing a
mention though
comment, so
that
like
there were out of body experiences as
I was
well.
gonna go with astral. Yeah, where they was it an astral
Yeah.
projection?
Yeah. So
Sorry.
when I can remember at the age, I don't know, maybe 10, 11, where you ride bicycles a lot in our town, it was kind of hilly. So as I would go to sleep, often I would have the image of riding the bicycle down the hill, and then the handlebars would separate, and the bike would go down the hill, and I would continue on a straight path, holding on to the handlebars, and then drop the handlebars, fly around the neighborhood at about the height of the telephone wires, and go check on my friends and things. It was usually night, so it was kind of boring in terms of what they were doing. But later on, would do things in a more experimental way. I would notice the digital clock as I would leave, what time it would be, what time I get back. I might go visit somebody who had a target. I'd ask them to put something on the dining room table, and I could see if I could identify that, come back, and then call them. And some of those were pretty interesting. I remember going up to see my brother one time, unbeknownst to him. He was about 1,000 miles away. saw him eat about 6 Oreo cookies and be on page 238 of this book, and then called him and was able to identify that to him. He said, yeah, that's what he was doing. So that's one of the things that got me interested in Monroe Institute, because it's kind of famous for out of body.
Right.
Um,
Bob Monroe
and
was a big advocate for astral projection, and I think wrote one of
yeah,
the classic books on it, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, he was a hardcore businessman and began to experiment with sleep learning. And because he had a lot of experience in radio shows, he used to do the music for like The Shadow and shows in the 30s and 40s, that he began to wonder about using sound to keep you just from falling asleep, right on that edge of sleep and awake, and to learn languages and things. Some of the work was with the Army, and they were having some success, but because of his exposure to that signal, he began to feel vibrations in his body as he would go to sleep. And one day he was thinking about flying the next day with his glider plane in the thermals in the mountains of Virginia. And he felt a bump, and he opened his eyes and saw a fountain. That confused him. And he oriented, and it was the chandelier on the ceiling. And he looked down and saw his own body in bed. And that kind of scared him. So he slammed back into the body. But he was checked out medically and psychologically. And then his curiosity got piqued. So he established the Institute basically he thought if 5,000 people had this experience, we would have a good database. And I think now it's 30 or 40,000 people have been through the premier program Gateway at Monroe. I love training there because people have all these interesting experiences. Talking to the people on the other side who have passed on and no longer have a physical body, creativity states, guidance states, out of body states, psychokinesis, remote viewing, if you're aware of that term, where you can
Yes.
perceive with no regard to time or distance. Joe McMonagle was remote viewer 001 in the government program, and he ended up marrying one of Bob's children. So he still talks occasionally at Monroe programs, Joe McMonagle. So it's kind of a big, beautiful family. They've moved virtually with COVID and hoping to reopen again maybe August, September for the residential programs.
Yeah, I just actually got my second COVID shot today.
Mhm.
So I'm waiting to see if there are any,
Congratulations.
thank you,
I got my
there are any
first on Monday.
side effects. But
Right.
we're actually taking remote viewing classes for the last
Uh-huh.
couple of months with a mutual friend of ours, Michelle, that I mentioned in the
Uh-huh.
email to you. And I'll tell you, and I don't want to talk about us too much, but I wanted to tell you an interesting thing that happened to me actually the other day that's kind of related to this. Now, Michelle had told us that there would be a good chance that we would have pretty vivid dreams, and we should keep a
Mm-hmm.
dream journal, right? Which is something I've done in the past, and
Yes.
it tends to help you remember those dreams. But I had this dream where there were things going on in the dream, and at some point in the dream, I took a nap, and when I took the nap in the dream, I astral projected. So it was like
Uh-huh.
a dream within a dream, and it felt very much. And I do have some experience with astral projection. I used to have them also, like when I was in middle school. I believe it or not, I was really into this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I was far better at it then than I am now. Now I have a really hard time getting it to work properly. But I'm in there, and I have this feeling of floating, and like I know I can will myself to fly and do these kind of things, and I did. And I was in this, like a dream where you're in a familiar place. It was
Mm-hmm.
in the town, and everything was slightly pixelated, and that's what I thought was interesting about this. Almost like a video game, but not. It was just it seemed computer generated in a way, and I
Mm-hmm.
woke up from I got scared because of the way I had fallen asleep. I was afraid I was going to fall over. Remembered this, snapped back to the body, but in the dream, got up and continued to
Mm-hmm.
have the dream. So when I woke up, I was like, "Oh my God, what just happened to me?"
I astral projected in a dream, in a
And
dream.
it made me think about like simulation theories and things like that. Like,
Yes.
did I go to another
Yeah.
layer of the onion of consciousness, of reality?
Right.
There was this kind of
Yes.
pixelated view within the astral projection. So it was very
Yeah.
strange. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. I
Yeah.
needed to tell somebody.
Consciousness is consciousness is really fascinating, and people that do a lot of lucid dreaming. I actually stopped lucid dreaming because sometimes I couldn't no longer tell when I was asleep or awake. For 20, 30 minutes, you'd be going through your morning routine and then realize you're still dreaming. And I found that disconcerting. These psychic abilities tend to go together. So a lot of people don't know, like Uri Geller was big on metal bending, and yet he was a world-class remote viewer. He could also do that, the target was a cluster of grapes, he could draw every grape in the right position. Joe McMonagle, who's a master remote viewer, can take a metal serving spoon and bend it to the place where they have to x-ray it to even figure out if it's still a spoon. Um, so when you activate some of these psychic abilities, often others begin to generate. And I do think a lot of poltergeist activity is probably psychokinesis being going on with often prepubescent girls. That area right at the beginning of puberty is common, but it's you know, the some people say, you know, I've talked to a guide or whatever, and they say, how do I know this is real? Most people exploring consciousness have given up on the idea of real. Uh, there's an ancient book from Egyptian times, Middle Egypt, called the Kabbalion. The first truth is everything is real. Second truth is everything is illusion. Third truth is the biggest mistake you could make is deciding either of those statements are truer than the other. Kind of a paradoxical universe, it looks like. Um, so, you know, the truck going by, you don't want to step in front of it. It is real on this level. And then at other levels, I've had reports of people driving right through a truck and not getting hurt.
Wow.
When I'm out in Vegas rolling dice, I can often see through the table, right, to see the people's feet underneath the table, even though the table's made of slate or heavy wood. Time gets distorted in this psychokinesis tasks. So, and I think that's similar to healing. Any energy healing system I'm aware of, there seems to be a place where they wink out of time a little bit. So matrix energetics has a 2-point technique, rapid eye movement, desensitization. There's an intention to heal and then a distraction by doing that, tapping. And we see that with PK too. So I had an experience out in Vegas once where I rolled the dice and they seemed to just be turning slowly on top of the table. I felt I could go to the bathroom and come back and they'd still be there. And I did that till it felt boring. And I said, okay, land on 3-3, which it did. Um, so you get into time and space issues, issues of consciousness, and can keep you busy for at least a lifetime trying to understand this stuff.
Absolutely. I don't know if we'll
Yeah,
ever figure out consciousness. We're trying like heck, but
It is a quest.
yes, it is.
yeah. But it
When you're,
looks like. Go ahead,
I
Kristen.
was going to ask when you're in Vegas and you're doing this, and I know you said everything is like you take it from the heart. You meditate first, and then you go downstairs, we'll say, and throw the dice. How about
Mhm.
all the energy around you? You can feel everybody's energy. You can feel the energy in the room. Does that play a role in how maybe sometimes how your dice will come out or when you're
Sure.
focused?
What we're doing is we send a preparation manual before people even go. I interview them on the phone to make sure they're not going to out of a fear or greed state, like trying to find next month's mortgage, you know.
Right.
And so it's people that are interested in energy work and risk and taking risk, like in day trading, those kind of things,
Yes.
um, and meditation. And we use meditation techniques. I have a whole series of meditations that are about 35 minutes on my website, Sync Creation, called The Abundant Heart, The Healing Heart, Ocean Heart. They tend to um, give you tools to put a beautiful ball around you of energy. When we get to Vegas, we then meditate as a group and put that vivid ball of energy around us. And as you probably know, like attracts like. So when we go through a casino, we see the people who are in love, the people who have just won. The neon looks beautiful. We don't tend to pick up the vibes of fear and greed that are plentiful out there, but we're in a different framework, if you will. When we get to the table, we have the table reserved just for us. The crews know us pretty well now. They burst into tears sometimes and say, "Give us some of this energy." And they become part of this zone, like in sports, a very high energy bubble. People in that area may come and try to observe, but the casino keeps them 6 feet away from us or so backward. And so if you go that way, the experience of Vegas is quite different than most people would experience Vegas. If you know those techniques and you go alone or with a loved one or friends, you can maintain that bubble. I'm not saying forever, but 4 or 5 days, sure. Um, but you'd have to renew it with beauty of nature, meditating, those kind of things. Because if your energy got to a lower vibration, then you would probably pick up the greed and other things that are there.
The
Does that make
negativity.
sense?
Yes,
Oh,
Yeah.
totally.
the negativity,
Absolutely.
definitely.
I
Yeah.
explained
So
that
this
natural.
becomes,
Sorry.
yeah, this becomes training because there's negativity at work, at the mall, in airports, sometimes in your own
Hmm.
family. And so you're learning to maintain a very high energy state. This is really my home study course called Sync Creation is designed to be a lifelong yoga of ever increasing your heart energy, your positive, empowering beliefs, so that you move through the world differently. And in this time of politics and COVID, that's been very handy for people because there's been a lot of fear and a
Yes.
lot of turmoil in the last, let's say, 12 months. But folks that are doing this, they move through beautifully. Um,
I love that correlation talking about the heart, as opposed to a lot of people go with the third eye thing and all their psychic abilities are with your third eye. But what you're saying is that is, like you said, is a steering wheel for the car, and it's really the heart energy
Hmm.
that flows out that changes
mhm,
your level of PK ability. Do you
yeah.
find that besides being able to change odds, say in a casino, that it also influences other things like telepathy? Like, for instance, Kristen and I are always in each other's heads, and it's crazy. We're like
We are.
you would think we were the oldest married couple ever because we're constantly saying, know what the other one's thinking, and like, oh my god, I was just thinking of that. We do that all the time. Do, is that more heart based than say mind? And do you
Yeah,
believe in the
I
third
would.
eye, if you will?
I'm going to back up and, if we use the chakra system for this to work well, you would have to have good rootedness. If you're not grounded to the earth and really want to be here on this planet, even though it's a challenging thing to do, that's where I see most people who are of goodwill, maybe very spiritual seeking, and they have trouble with finances, relationship health. Usually it's because they're not grounded. So this starts with being grounded. Then the power center feeling comfortable and the heart center very open. Throat actually is important too because it's an area of expression. Third eye can be great for telepathic kinds of things, but projecting energy outward, it can be a PK point as well. And then the crown being open for energy from highest spirit. Yes, usually we'll see as PK goes up, intuition goes up. So, and telepathy goes up. So we have people say that in the casino, they might have a thought, gee, I'd like to meet so and so. I haven't talked to them much, and they'll show up right in synchronistic order right at the bottom of the elevator with you. People will have a lot of telepathy thoughts at the table. So if we three were at the table, I might be looking at Kristen and I just know she's going to roll a 10 as 5, 5 equals 10. I can bet on that, and that will come in. So we have a table of 18 people, and say you two are on the one end. We put an energy arch around you, two people to really stabilize your energy
Mhm.
and to send you good love, keep you grounded. And then at the other end of the table, where people were sitting there, we go, I think she's going to roll a 9. Yeah, I do too. 7 out of 8 people will know that you're going to roll a 9 next. And so we bet that. So we are dancing between telepathy, precognition, and PK all the time. People ask me, well, at Royal Flush and Hearts, did you know which machine, or and use intuition to sit down at the right
Mhm.
time, or did you affect the machine? And I think it's both. Usually we will know when the timing is right and the place is right to project the energy to create change in the physical universe. And that tends to happen when you're in good space, of when to ask your boss for a raise, when to call a person for a date, when to start a new project for business. There's a intuitional connecting with the flow, and then within that flow, beginning to actively influence that flow. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
it sure does. I love that
So
it comes from the heart. I really do.
yeah, it's
Being grounded
yeah,
and coming from, as I always say that,
Hmm.
that's my thing. It always
yeah,
comes from my heart. And that's where I flow
yeah.
the energy from.
So we mentioned the Princeton lab. There's a fella, Herb Mertz, I think it is. Yeah, he wrote a book called The Selection Effect recently, and he was working with the random number generators. And he is an engineer, very dedicated. So did a million trials by himself, but he'd get to a place where he was picking 0 or 1, the equivalent of flipping heads on a coin 12, 15 times in a row. When he get to that point, he would then begin to fear that he would not be able to do it the next time, and also the fear that he would be able to do it the next time, because it would shatter his reality beliefs a little bit. And he would fail at that point, when he would both be afraid of success and afraid of failure at the same time. Then one day he was sitting there and he began to think of his grandma, who he deeply loved. Her cookies she made, I don't know what it was. But when he was in that open heart space about his grandma, the success continued. And he couldn't just immediately say, Grandma, do this for me again. It had to be genuine. But he found if he was genuinely in his heart, he could continue the flow. And that's when, at slot machines, usually I talk to my mom and dad, who are both on the other side, my 2 brothers. I'm in this love space after I've set my goal, of a royal flush, for example. But then I move into the heart and then let that come through. If you stay in your head, it'll just trip you up. You don't have to
It's
kill
true.
ego, but you have to soften it. Uh,
It's,
I love that. I love that. It reminds me of the adage, like, with work and employment and the things you do in your life. If you love what you do, it's no longer work.
right.
If you're in a happy space with life and comfortable and you enjoy it, and it, for whatever reason,
yes.
it no longer becomes work, and it just flows and things just
Hmm.
flow naturally.
Mm.
Rather than being
Yeah,
in a desperate
I
mode.
use almost like a balance scale, where if you were in 90% fear, oh my God, I'm going to go ask for a raise, but I hope they don't fire me, and 10% desiring that raise and feeling worthwhile and good for that raise, you're probably going to get what you don't want. As you get to 50-50, things, not much happens. 60-40, where you're 60% in good desire, happiness, 40% fear, things begin to come in, but with glitches. As you get to 80%, they come in easier. 90%, they begin to manifest with lots of synchronicity, serendipity. And so you don't have to have zero fear, but if you can get the fear down to 10% or less, that's when things flow in relationship and business and life and PK. Um, and it's a free choice universe to me. And it's normal for us to base what's happening on our past experience. It's not the universe doing it to you. So I'm going to make up an example. I'm a 15-year-old guy. I'm in class and I get attracted to a gal and I ask her friends, do you think you might like me or things? And eventually I get up the nerve to ask her out. And I go and say, would you like to go out with me Saturday to the movies? And she stiffens and reddens and says no. I'm going to assume she didn't like me. What I don't know is she does like me. She asked her dad the night before, I think this nice guy in class is going to ask me out. Can I go? And he said, no, you can't date till you're 16. So what she's showing me is her anger and embarrassment at what her father has said to her.
Hmm.
But now I've had an experience and I make a conclusion. She didn't like me. I wait 3 months and I get the eye of somebody else and begin to be attracted to them. And now I have fear that I'll be rejected. So I go up to her at the wrong time, sweat under my arms, and say, well, you wouldn't want to go out with me, would you? When she's with her cool friends, my timing is off. And she says, oh, get lost. Now I got 2 episodes of experience, and that's going to tend to be what I repeat over and over until some blessing comes along, something changes it. So, a lot of people think they may not deserve good or they don't have talent. I find it's almost never that. It's more this idea that there's some patterns that you make conclusions from. And in a free choice universe, until you choose to change those, they will continue often. Does that make sense?
Yes,
It totally makes sense.
totally.
You
Yeah.
know, where we have this kind of, you know, paranormal experience, unusual experience background. Like, what I wonder about the correlation between that. Like you mentioned, the prepubescent teenage girls, and that is something people talk about in those circles. Teenagers, there's a lot of hormones being able to influence things and create poltergeist-like activity. Um, Let me ask you, when you do the slot machines, you probably find no difference between a computer slot machine and a mechanical one, or has it mattered to you? Does the device matter? I guess would be the
Um,
question.
they're pretty much all computer now, even the ones that have the old handles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they may have had mechanical insides at one point, I don't know. But the ones now are through their pseudorandom number generator are picking 1,000 hands a second, and they're just paralleling what should happen poker by chance. And so it's not true that so you could play the machine for a half hour and leave, and then the next person gets a jackpot. If you had just stayed, you would have. It's very timing down to 1,000ths of a second. I think usually in laboratories, scientists like this, what we call micro PK, working with random number generators, things that are changing at a quantum level very quickly, versus macro PK, meaning levitating something across the room, bending metal with your mind, those things. But basically, the difference would be your belief. So, people ask me, could I affect a machine on internet computers? You know, um, like a gambling site that's located in the islands. Probably you could, but you might conceive of it as farther away and harder to deal with, and therefore it would be. Initially, best I know, the Russians thought the PK field was about 4 or 5 feet from the body. US Americans dealing with this felt it was unlimited, and they got results to prove both of those. Um, so in the US studies, we do PK affecting things in the past, as long as no human has observed it. Um, one guy was in Antarctica one time, and I asked him to send a number to a group in Vegas, and he sent the number. I kept track. I didn't know what he was sending. In that workshop, we rolled a lot of 5, 4 equals 9s. 80% of the 9s were 5, 4 versus 6, 3, and they should be equal by chance. When I got home, he sent an email saying he was thinking 5, 4 equals 9. So somebody in Antarctica, just one person, sending it that great distance to us could have effect. So I don't worry too much, of how the mind makes the dice roll a certain way, how the mind gets the metal to bend, how the mind affects the computer. There's some quantum physics articles by PEAR Lab you can see online, talking about some theoretical underpinnings, but we don't know exactly how it happens except to know that the ego doesn't do it. And there doesn't seem to be a limit unless we put the limit on it.
So it's almost the mental belief in the intention, um,
Yes.
how you view it. If you
Yeah.
believe it will change and you feel good about it from the heart
Hmm.
to the mind, and you actually see those
Your
connections,
energy flows.
and the data shows. And you know, when you talk about these kind of numbers and odds, it's fascinating. You know, it's so much different. This is where I love parapsychology, and I think it's so interesting because you do the science behind it in the math, and you look at it and you go, okay, well, you know, this is a little bit more than you know,
Yeah.
did I hear something or did it something light up? It's like, wow, look at this. This is the real thing. It's hard to debunk it, if you will.
Yeah, we have, there's a good book called, I think it's Real Magic, Dean Radin. But at this point, from his point of view, doing meta-analysis of all the research in the last few decades on psychokinesis, remote viewing, telepathy, precognition, they are what they're called Six Sigma events. They would not occur even once in a billion by chance. And those are getting pretty strong. We put out a new drug when it's 101 by chance. Um, and I'm doing the MC squared program I mentioned with PK now virtually from Monroe Institute, and we have people around the world. The last group, I think we had, I don't know, 15, 16 people. And we had each of the people at the same time in their country roll the dice 10 times looking for doubles. We know they should come up once in 6 times by chance. So we can take the amount of people in the group and times it by 10, divide it by 6. So in that group, I know we were supposed to roll 18 doubles by chance. We rolled 34. So in that 10 minutes or less, we were changing people's belief systems because 34 versus 18 by chance is very significant. Um, and when we do light bulb lighting with PK energy, we've measured 400 volts electricity off our hands.
Wow.
The metal bending has been looked at under electron microscope, and it looks different than if you bent the metal by force. There's a good book called The Metal Benders by two physicists from England who look at this stuff. So we look pretty deeply on it scientifically. Um, on the energy healing, we can see energy affecting DNA and changing how tightly it's wrapped and how many messages are going on in DNA. They do experiments with bacteria in vials where there might be 100 million bacteria in this container, and we know this antibiotic will kill 97% of them within 15 minutes. If we have a healer put protective energy around that vial, there'll be a high survival rate of that bacteria even an hour later. So the experiments are getting pretty sophisticated to get away from placebo effects and fraud and different things that could be in the way. So I think it's pretty hard now to be an open-minded scientist and say this has not been proven, um, from my point of view.
Absolutely, and even the placebo effect itself is
Sure.
fascinating because you can measure the placebo effect, and it's just
Yeah.
people's belief that you know that
Yeah.
drug did work for that particular ailment.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's right.
very
Mhm.
fascinating. A
Yeah.
couple of comments out there in chat. Robert Honing says there are many things that only exist if you truly believe they do. Thank you, Robert. And Anne Marie Young says all connected, everything.
Yes. We much of this we are doing is oneness,
Mm.
um, and ego tends to have a little trouble with oneness. So much of what we're doing is softening the ego by moving into the heart. You can move out of your mind by vigorous physical exercise, by connecting, with Earth, with nature. But one easy way is to move into a very strong, loving state. And so, I had a film made of many people bending metal. And it was interesting. Each person did it differently. One would talk to the molecules. One guy, he had a Oneida heavy stainless fork, and he wanted to bend the tines, was having no luck. So he remembered how much his dog liked to be massaged between the pads of their feet. And when he did that, the fork just went very simply. I have some examples if you'd like to see.
Yes, please.
Here's one that I did. Let's see if I can find it on camera here. Everything is reversed, so
Yes, us too.
take this a minute here. So I hope I didn't make somebody seasick. But that's the heaviest Oneida silverware. And if you try to bend those tines with your hand, you just make marks in your fingers. This is the heaviest Oneida spoon. I've got to go this way.
There you go.
And
There you go.
There you go.
Perfect.
there is so tight that it's hard to even see it.
Oh, it's
But
twisted.
a metallurgist looked at that and said, that's physically impossible because the metal would break. And I even have a picture of somebody, I didn't see this done. It was done in a lab in California where somebody twisted a pencil into a pretzel. So a wooden pencil.
Come on.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So we have some fun.
I guess
That
so.
certainly does seem fun.
Now I want to do that too.
Yeah, geez, that's something I haven't tried. And I do remember Uri Geller, of course. He was pretty famous.
Yeah.
Often on TV, and a lot of controversy and stuff surrounding him. But he seemed to really be able to do these things. And
Yeah, he was in independent university labs, and they would take his shirt off so he'd be naked from the waist up. And they would have master magicians watching high-speed cameras in 4 different directions, all to keep from cheating to happen. And he was successful. But he was only 17 years old when he came. And my best feeling is the pressure got too much, and he faked a fake on TV. And because, again, he's good remote viewer besides PK, he went down to Mexico and did a lot of work with oil and gas drilling, using the commissions from that for his favorite charity, which was children's charities, and went back to England. And he became active again recently, I think a little bit, but interesting fella. He claimed a specialness where my feeling is we can all do this. And I see a difference between people that can do this for years and years and years and it be positive psychologically. They usually don't claim to be special. They claim everybody can do it and then go that way. But it can be a way to really change your beliefs a bit.
A lot. Most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about people and heart transplants. When you have energy, then you get, say, a heart transplant from somebody, and we've heard stories about people feeling the person who was harvested from their feelings and
Yeah, right. Their emotions,
their
people,
emotions
heart
and
transplant
Yeah.
recipients sometimes feel the
exactly.
emotions or experiences, or I
Yeah.
think even memories of
Yes.
people who had got the heart came from initially.
Yes.
And do you think that
Yes.
ties into this?
Well, I think they did have even one episode where I think it was a woman, the heart she got was uh, from somebody, and she was able to go back and see who murdered the person that was the donor. And they
Wow.
pick him up and arrest him because she experienced that scene. I think, excuse me, I think, one first place is to free up concepts that the mind is in the brain. It seems non-local from this work we do. There also seems to be quite a bit of intelligence in the heart and in the gut. Heart Math does quite a bit of stuff within the heart area. So if you then assume non-local for consciousness, it becomes easier to see how some of this stuff might be possible. That, there's a psychometrist who could read a watch or a bracelet from somebody dead 100 years and give a perfect reading for what happened in that person's life. I put the organ in, like a heart transplant, maybe in that same thing, that a certain object or house or an organ or holding somebody's hand, all of those things can be ways into greater knowledge about what you're seeking knowledge about. Remote viewers, they might even just use a picture of an object that nobody's seen. A computer's holding the picture, and they could, let's say it was a picture of a bowl. If you wanted to know, they could tell you who smelt the bowl, who
Wow.
formed the bowl, and how many kids they had.
Oh my goodness.
So information seems very accessible, but there can be various ways in it. And I think one way might be a transplanted organ. That could be one of the ways. So that's my theory. I can't prove it. But
Robert Honing says memories are stored at the cellular level.
yes,
So
so I think it's in our very DNA. We can make changes there in cellular structure. Often the emotional body is what keeps something there. So, in that accident I mentioned let me see, I'm 71, so 50 years ago, my foot was almost torn off in a motorcycle accident. But
Goodness.
at this point, no cell is there that was there then. What keeps the memory of the injury? It's usually the emotional body and your mental constructs continuing to put those impressions into the cells. And if you change that, then healing can occur at a much deeper level. So we've seen healings be instant if a person can change their belief and their emotion around it. Not all the time, but often that can be possible.
sure, and people that have had limbs removed sometimes, continue to feel them, right? That seems to be a
Yeah.
thing as well, which is interesting. You mentioned
Mhm.
feelings of oneness, and this, through your youth and going through the university labs, this oneness feeling. It seems complementary to that idea that you know not everything's as separate as we think. Like the mind is what controls all the thoughts
Yeah.
and memories and stuff, and that
The heart,
the
love.
heart and other parts of the body maybe are working more conjoined than we give it credit for.
Absolutely.
How would you go about
Yeah.
cultivating that heart energy, um, that happiness, that good spirit?
Yeah. Well, if people watch a video of soldiers returning from war, being reunited with the family, or puppies being born, their hearts will open for a few minutes, but then the first bad phone call or commercial on TV, it closes again. So we look a lot at how to increasingly make this a consistent heart opening state. I did a book called Liquid Luck. It first became out as a meditation exercise called Liquid Luck. And I was trying to take 20 years of experience in this and condense it down to 35 minutes or so a person could get a taste of how this would be possible. And in that exercise, after the deep relaxation with binaural beat, we put in first feel happiness and help a person begin to feel happy, then abundant, then grateful, then compassionate, which gets them out of ego, then praising of the world, then loving, and then feelings of good fortune. And then all they need to do is take a drink of this imaginary liquid that they've just formed with all these beautiful things in it when they want to buy a lotto ticket or whatever. And within days, I got reports of winning lottos, selling houses, finding soulmates, getting business ideas, solving problems in business.
That's
And so I
amazing.
wrote a book called The Liquid Luck Handbook about it. But that was one way to give people a taste of opening their heart. Since then, I've accented that even more deeply with a series called the Heart Series, the Abundant Heart, Healing Heart, Ocean Heart, Forgiving Heart, where there is instruction in the meditative state to how to open your heart. And that's different for everybody. Somebody may feel kinesthetically that that heart area warms up. Others visual might feel golden light coming into that area. Someone else may think of a loved one. Someone else may feel very grateful. But we help them cultivate this as a consistent, steady feeling, and then to keep it. So the image in Ocean Heart is your heart is a vast ocean of unconditional love. And then later on, things aren't going too well. You can just think of that ocean and recall a feeling of an oceanic loving feeling within your heart area. And it usually will return quickly. The main thing in the way is fear. You know, I don't think love has an opposite, but fear clouds love. So my favorite saying, I have it on my wall, is fear is expensive, love is priceless, choose wisely. Um,
I
and
love
so
that.
much of what we're doing, yeah, is to really reduce fear. Um, and, you know, fear can be a tough one if you're waiting for a biopsy result or you haven't worked in 3 months and your rent is due. Um, you can't, it has to be a genuine moving away. So one of the ways we often do is first ask the person to think of all the things that they are grateful for, that their hands work, the miracle of the human hand, the beauty of nature, the books that they've read, the animals that have been in their life as pets, the people in their life that have cared about them, teachers in the past, what have you, and focus on what they do have, even if they're jobless at that moment, or even if they're waiting for that biopsy. And then they may see that as a big ice cream sundae, if they like sundaes, and what else they would like a free biopsy, negative biopsy result, clear biopsy, or that job coming in as the cherry on top of the sundae. But we're asking to hold the space of gratitude and awareness of all the things that are already going right. And for most of us, that's a lot. You know, even
Sure.
when I was in the body cast, I could celebrate breath. I could celebrate that I was in a place where people cared for me and brought me food to eat. It was hospital food, which was maybe not the most gourmet thing, but
Right.
I was very grateful not to be starving, right?
It's very true.
And people would come to visit, and I could smell the air in their coats and remember the amazingness of fresh air. And they brought in beautiful classical music so I could listen to Beethoven or Bach. So even in a body cast, there was a lot to be grateful for. Um, and so if you can move into that, that usually will reduce fear quite a bit, reduce feelings of being victimized, things that would get in the way of manifesting positively or energy healing to occur. Um, that seem to make sense to you guys?
Absolutely. I
Absolutely.
was going to say, I tell my
Yeah.
children that I actually, tell them a lot to be grateful, be thankful for everything. Something worse could be wrong, or
Yeah.
so this is what we do.
Yeah.
My friend Anne Marie is up there. Could you read that, please? I can't see.
Sure. Anne Marie says, I'll show it on our stream. When you let the ego go and feel nothing, you are most connected to everything.
That's very
That's a
true.
good way to put it.
Her and I are very grounded and loving people.
Yeah.
So
I think that word
it's
gratefulness is not used enough,
no,
really.
it's not.
People don't
There
think
really
about it.
isn't.
And it's something that we've talked about. And sometimes even like with eating, I'm not vegan. And I'll
Mhm.
admit, I feel a little guilt on the animals sometimes. And if I say
Mhm.
something, at least just mentally kind of thank it for being there on my
Mhm.
plate, somehow I feel better about eating it. It almost tastes better that way.
Yeah.
It's a
And I
little thing.
think, one of the big things is this has to be genuine. You could put somebody into what we call New Age guilt by saying you should be grateful, you know, um, for the peas on your plate you don't like because there's starving kids in Asia or whatever it could be.
Right.
Right.
And you should be grateful to, write the thank you note to Aunt Nellie who sent you socks for Christmas that are 2 sizes too small, because it's the thought that counted. And
Right.
you have to find a way really for that, the child, the teenager, if you said you should be grateful, they may snap back at you. I didn't ask to be born, um, you know, give you dagger eyes or something, because they're feeling very badly hormonally, and their perspective is a narrow ego perspective. So you need to meet people where they are in their pain, and but often can then move them to this place of gratitude if you do that with unconditional love, without judgment of them, of where they are.
Very true.
Um, that type of thing. So we don't want, you should be grateful to become another uh, pat answer.
Mm.
Sometimes, there is a place for genuine grief. When my brother died of suicide, when, I had a wife who had lost a child of cancer at 6 years old. There's in the humanness we have, there's a time for mourning and an expression of negative emotion. We don't want to repress all that and just be stiff upper lip in a new kind of way, always grateful, because it would be false. We have to move to genuine gratitude. And it could be a little bit of a journey to get there, but that's where we want to go.
It's
uh,
Life is a
and
range of emotions. That's absolutely
that's
true. I don't
yes,
think
human.
yeah,
repressing them would be healthy. And yeah,
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 humans themselves are just in a range of array of emotions.
that's
So
the life
yes,
experience
that's
and
it.
our consciousness.
Right.
yes.
Right.
From one perspective, some people have had the vision in a near-death experience,
Mhm.
or a vision from the other side when they look back at a life where they see how everything was in perfect order, and there's a knowingness of it is all good, if you will.
Mhm.
But that's a perspective beyond black and white, good and evil, pain and pleasure.
Sure.
And that paradoxical reality we talked about, one needs to have respect and compassion for a person who's vibrating in a reality where there is good and evil, and is in a reality where there is pain and pleasure. And you know, I have my own knowingness and faith that we'll be at some other level at some point where we see things maybe differently. But the validity of our experience needs to be honored without then going into just mulling around in victimhood for 20 years.
Absolutely. It's
But,
funny you mentioned the near death experience. We interviewed an NDE last year at some point, and I'm
A
sorry if
few of
she's
them.
out there listening to this. I can't remember which one she was that said this, but when she came back, she actually changed everything in her life. It wasn't in order, everything was wrong. And she realized her husband had been cheating on her, and she sold her house and a car like
mhm,
within a week of coming back
Yeah.
to the
yeah,
life consciousness, and she fixed it, and she was so happy, and she was the most positive person, that you would talk to.
yes,
She said she felt more at peace in her heart as well, and I really like that
yeah,
part about it. And I'm so glad she's doing
mm,
well.
So
I could
that's
just remember
fascinating.
yeah.
reading.
Yeah, people make those kind of changes often when they um, move out of fear and can accept what is right now.
Hmm.
If a person had a drinking problem, they're probably not going to change it at all until they first admit they have a problem. So the near-death experience, often people come back with much less fear and greater insight, and then they will compassionately look at their life, and rather than from victim, and they'll say compassionately, "I need to change this. There's no trust in this relationship, or this person's abusive to me, or this job no longer serves me." And they can do that with much less fear because they know at the deepest level that they're okay, and that they're loved, and their experiences are treasured.
Right.
Absolutely. Could you tell us about your scene creations, which we've put there in the ticker, can be found at
Yes.
www.scenecreations.com. Your program
Yeah,
for everything we've been talking about and cultivating this PK. How does it work?
sure. So it's spelled SYNC, like the word synchronize, and then the word creation, CREATION. And it's on what we call a COVID special right now. $300 off. It started with my brother's suicide, thinking, how can a good man, he was intelligent, hardworking, honest, etc., how can things not go well? And it felt to me like he was not feeling deserving of goodness, and he had a lot of fear. So at the basics of the course, there's a lot of work within there and tools to help with feelings of limit, emotions that are maybe restricting, and moving you into being able to visualize an ever increasing lifelong yoga of increasing love. It's designed with all these psychokinesis tasks. So the metal bending comes with metal, seeds to grow in your hand. We've had root growth of 2.5 inches in 2 minutes off of sending energy,
That's incredible.
those kind of
That's
things.
amazing.
Yeah. So we're wanting to give people very tangible verification that this works, that they can do it, and what the rhythm of building energy, focusing in, letting go, that energy, how to get these things to work in the area of manifesting, healing, and PK. And there's 13 exercises with the brainwave patterning that we've mentioned. A couple other free exercises during the COVID special are put in there. And this has been, if people go to my website, Sync Creations, the tab that says Home Study on top, there's a survey of 60 people at the bottom of that page who've done Sync Creation and what they used it for. And that's a gamut from, many people beginning to lucid dream, talk to relatives that have passed on, talk to unborn children, be lucky in casinos, start businesses, have improvement of health, all kinds of cool stuff. And on the Sync Creation website, there's also lots of free articles. Top left, it says previous newsletters. And there's tips for energy healing, for PK, for manifesting. And so people may want to read the free articles at minimum just to get a little more background on this. But the Sync Creation Home Study is our like Cadillac plan. It's our very thorough thing designed to be used lifelong. If somebody wants a taste, they can go to the products tab on top and just get one of these exercises. They're under 20 bucks as download or CD, like the Healing Heart if you had interest in the healing, Liquid Luck if you thought that was interesting when I talked about that. So they're there just to be very accessible at many levels of commitment, if you will. But the Sync Creation Home Study course has been a big bestseller during COVID because people are home.
Right.
And
Sure.
if they work 2 or 3 weeks, hours a week on this, they can make really good progress. So,
And eventually, when we get past this, I think, as you mentioned earlier, your program ties into trips to Vegas, and you do take groups, and
yes,
it's something.
a lot of people do both. The MC Squared at Monroe Institute that I talked about is a virtual program, and eventually will be residential again, has very similar content to Sync Creation. So all of these kind of work are related together in different ways. I've had my shot. I took J&J, so it was a one-shot deal. And
Excellent.
we're probably going to require vaccination if we start in the fall, because we have people from around the world come to the Vegas workshop. And for everybody's safety, that might be a criteria. But we're eager to get started again. I love going out there. And,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great way to think of it. We've been to the casino and had some runs, and I like them.
He
I don't
likes
do it a
craps.
lot,
He likes
but
the dice.
that was one of the things that drew me to your book. And yeah, I've had
Yeah.
those times where it just felt like I'm never gonna crap out here. And
Yeah.
people were making money. I've
Yeah.
had people give me tips and go, this
Yes.
kind of thing. No, not the kind of odds you talk about in these books, but I feel like there was something there.
Yeah.
It just felt good, and it was a
Yeah.
positive thing. I'd be like, blowing the dice.
Yeah, blowing the dice. is the best.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And it's a very happy, uplifting thing.
Yes.
Experience.
Even if it's for 20 minutes, people will report it was one of the most fun they could have legally as an adult.
Right.
And you
Right.
can make a lot of money in 20 minutes of craps. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
Yes.
very
we
fast
did.
moving
Yes.
game.
Yeah. I'm more of a blackjack
Yeah.
girl, so
Uh-huh. Yeah.
yeah.
That can
Yeah.
work too.
As we've come to find out,
Blackjack is real good
advice
with intuition.
doesn't matter.
Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah.
She has wicked intuition. Keeps me on the
Yeah.
straight and narrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I think, one of the reasons to do this stuff is for personal and then family. But above that, I think right now, culturally, it's really important we make the shift away from fear and into positive manifestation, because it is a free choice universe and it's a beautiful planet that could be a paradise if we focus in those kind of areas. Um, and so I'm very heartened when I see, Monroe Institute put out some free meditations, about 10 minutes long, most of them at the beginning of COVID, one a week, a new one. And they've had hundreds of thousands of people listen. And there is some convergence going now where larger and larger groups are focusing more on what we can do in the positive creator way, if we can get out of our usual funk of
Exactly.
limiting thoughts and limiting beliefs as a culture. And things are coming up now for people to be very discerning. One other use for intuition is to try to decide what is truth and what isn't, because there's a lot of conflicting information out there.
Right.
But I think my grandkids are going to have great lives. I'm an optimist. I just have that feeling that we're going to turn this around.
I sure hope so. And
Yeah.
I feel like things are changing. And of course, this it's spring now, it's summer's you can just around the corner, the sun's out more, and there's just something to that
Yeah,
that makes you feel good.
It's
At
true.
least where we are in this part of the
that
country. It's
helps.
actually a beautiful day today, which is nice for a change.
Hmm.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you one other thing, or just make a point. The random number generators that we talk about when you discuss these studies, I think they're quantum, aren't they? They're really generating
Yes,
numbers at a very, very high rate of speed.
yeah. Well, they are. There's the genuine random number generators, best I understand, which is what we use in scientific labs. They're a little bit more pricey. They are based on quantum uncertainty. So there's quantum things going on in nanoseconds or even less uh,
Hmm.
period of time, very, very fast, as you mentioned. And that is used in the decision-making process by the computer to decide what number comes next. There is something called a pseudo-random number generator. That's what's being used in most slot machines. It's making decisions also at least 1,000 times a second or more, off of a mathematical route. Both of those are influenceable. And again, it doesn't even seem like time is relevant. So we could take a data pack that no human has looked at that's 30 years ago in the Princeton lab sitting there. And if nobody's looked at that data, you today could say, I want it to be more ones and zeros, for example. And it's likely that it will be when they open the data pack. So this stuff seems independent of time or distance. But yes, the random number generators are moving at very fast rates of speed.
That's so interesting. And I know there was a study, and I forget the gentleman's name who did get this started, but I think you mentioned it in the book too as well, where we have these kind of random number generators, RNGs around the world, and how they change. I guess there's quite a few of them around there, based on the climate and attitudes of the country. Like during 9/11, they all tended to go to a one or a zero in a pattern where the odds of that occurring were ridiculous.
Yeah, when you like at Monroe Institute, they had 4 or 5 different buildings on campus. the one building that people would meet to do group sharing on Wednesday in their gateway, which is kind of a peak day. It's a day in silence. In the morning, there's 3 exercises back to back. The random number generator would go into order in that room, but not the surrounding buildings. When you have a worldwide event like 9/11, about 10, 15 minutes before the event, these random number generators around the world went into order. This is called the Global Consciousness Project. And it's also gone into order with tidal waves, O.J. Simpson trial when we're waiting the verdict, Super Bowls, Obama's acceptance speech to the first time he became president. Times when 1 billion people are focusing on the planet, they around the world tend to go into order. And that's very much like that ArtReg experiment that I mentioned. There's also a global coherence project done by HeartMath in conjunction with Celeron, I think, which is an organization that came out of the Pear Lab. And they are measuring magnetic fields around the earth when people pray, when people move into peaceful states. And they're seeing results too in magnetic fields. So you have the random number generators seeming to respond as well as magnetic field detectors respond.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
I've never heard of
Yeah,
that one with the magnetic field.
it's so
yeah,
interesting. And again,
yeah,
harkens back to that oneness, right? So
yeah,
beyond the body,
yeah.
there's also um, ourselves as a collective, and it kind of speaks to the collective
Mm,
unconscious that people talk about often.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So, um, I guess really to nag a little on this today is if you can really open up your belief of how far your power could extend, how far your influence extends, how far grace can come from to you, how you're independent of time and space. All these things change what is possible in your world. Um, I think I might put in the Inner Vegas book an example of a fellow. He wanted a job and he wasn't having much luck getting any results that he liked. And I said to him, his name was Bob, what would you really like? And he said, I think I'd like a job. He's a playful guy, about 2 months a year, outside in beautiful weather, surrounded by pretty girls. Okay. So we said, well, go into these deep meditative states and put that out. And he went into what Monroe calls Focus 12, which we have in the Sync Creation Home Study. And he put that out and he got a call from somebody he barely knew from high school who took him out to lunch twice and paid for lunch. And the guy sold him his business on Rehoboth Beach, Maryland shore in the eastern shore of the United States. And by the end of the year, he had 3 boats, a Lexus. Pretty girl in a bikini would ride in the boat to get everybody's attention. Coca-Cola or a local restaurant would have an ad one side or the other of the boat. And the season was 2 months a year. But for most people, as soon as you say a job 2 months a year, they laugh. Game over. That's not in their belief system of what a job would be like. Their belief system might be hard, unpleasant work, 60 hours a week equals a job. And therefore, that's what the box of possibility is for them. So as soon as you can open to a job 2 months a year, more magic can happen. Okay. And we know now that some, teenager gets an idea online and over the weekend becomes a millionaire with the idea, with the power of social media now. So our ability to change the world, to change the planet, to change our circumstance, to change our community is vastly underestimated by the way we usually think. And so my commercial is really to open up. And then as you build greater and greater heart energy, and that's matched by feelings that there is unlimited possibility, that's when the magic comes. And to realize we're in a magic world, the miracle of the human hand is magic. And so if you can have that type of attitude, then we're going to make the transition from where we are now politically, economically, environmentally, to a very different world. It can be almost a blink of an eye.
It's very true. It's amazing.
It is. It's
So
nice
you
to think
guys like ghosts, huh? You
Oh, we
like
do.
poltergeists?
We
Uh-huh.
do,
We do.
but I don't
we're
particularly care for the poltergeist, but we've seen, so
interested in proof of an afterlife.
yes.
You know, and that's
Yeah.
where I was asking you about the self manifestation of poltergeist activity, you know, versus
Hmm.
something that is actually there talking back to you. You know, and when we
Yes.
talk about devices like slot machines, you know, I'm thinking in my head, you know, there's a whole host of what I call paranormal toys, you know, and there are things like EMF readers
Hmm.
and different things
Yes.
that sometimes seem to really work. You know, we've had experiences with them that, you know,
Hmm.
are fascinating and weren't easily explainable. So
Yes.
I guess my question is how much of this stuff occurs through self manifestation or somebody's even fear, a different emotion of
Hmm.
being in a scary place, right? Do you see people in the dark at night with the kind of trying to build up the fear intensity? Um, we do this stuff during the day, by the way.
Yeah, we don't need
For
to
the
do it
most
at
part, we
night.
rarely do anything at night. But you know, I wonder if they're bringing it on themselves through
Right.
self
Hmm.
manifestation, or you know, in those cases, there is something, you know, talking or someone talking back to them, and you know, I think both occur. Really, myself personally, I think we both agree on that. But trying to divide
Yeah, I
that
think.
and decipher
Yeah.
what is what is pretty
Yeah.
difficult
I think
challenge.
both are there. I'm not a huge expert in the poltergeist area, but I've seen evidence of things that, from my sense of knowing, I know were uh, poltergeist activity, which I might say would be usually ego fragments, kind of an echo of a person. And I would contrast that to beautiful, sometimes highly complex messages for people who may be in spirit and they're in communication with us. And then there are some things that are self generated by a person in body here in that psychokinetic way.
Mhm.
So there's a very rich variety of experiences. Um, and Some I would consider kind of ghost story that had some fear components, other things that have been very beautiful, many things that have been confirmed. Um, in that when people research this and look for verification of reincarnation, verification of things, you know, they will have people um, aspect messages from other side about hidden objects or
Mhm.
circumstances of a crime or whatever that are very verifiable. But you can twist yourself into a pretzel because you can say, well, maybe it's universal mind and you're being telepathic versus really talking, you know. But Occam's razor says the simplest explanation tends to be the truer one.
Mhm.
I think we have to leave
Right.
room for these phenomena, um, about a variety of ones. So um, I think
The,
it's sure not a boring planet. There's plenty to keep you occupied
it
to
sure
study
is.
and
Absolutely.
learn about.
This sure
Yeah.
is.
He's pulling props out.
Yeah, I can show you one of my props. So, like, this is a device we like. This is a called a Mel meter, and this thing, yeah, I think, is 3 or 4 different things that it can measure. You know, and we've seen
Okay.
maybe EMF, static electricity in the air, temperature, things that nature. Seen it just
Hmm.
go bananas, for lack of a better word. So much so,
Yes.
in certain instances, that it, you know, actually reached out to the manufacturer. His name's Gary Galga, you know, and sent him a video
Uh-huh.
of it. Let's see if he could explain it, and he couldn't explain it either. So, you know, I feel
Interesting.
like something might have happened with that, but was it through self
Hmm.
manifestation? That's where
Right.
I wonder.
Yeah.
You
Or
know,
a
Yeah.
was
different
there's
consciousness.
something there?
Right.
You know, we don't think it's all scary and spooky, although
No.
we like we're kind of creepy and we like spooky things back there. But you know, I think it's just a fascinating um fascinating world, like you said.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love the positive energy in your message and this idea of
Yes,
cultivating
definitely.
heart energy. And it, you're talking about more than
It's,
winning at the casino. You're talking about improving one's life.
yeah, the casino really was, it picked up because it's such a quick feedback device. I could think negative for weeks before I got sick, or I might think positive for months and my soulmate might not show up because those processes may take a longer time. And so a lot of times when people try to visualize, say like the movie The Secret, and they might, see the house or whatever they're looking, nothing happens. They again feel maybe they're not talented or deserving, or that it's bull, it doesn't, it's fake, it really doesn't work. And so you're looking around for a place that would give you really quick feedback like your machine there does, and also keep your excitement high. And the casino was wonderful for that, but also the, seeing somebody seeing root growth in their hand in 2 or 3 minutes, on seeds in
That's
their hand,
fascinating.
and
Yeah.
feeling the vibration in their hand when that happens,
Mm.
lighting the light bulb. The best we've had on that was a report of a six-pack of bulbs across the room for 20 minutes. They stayed lit.
Wow.
The metal bending, we've had amazing kinds of things there. Those give you confidence. And so that's, I do spend some time in the laboratory, um, because I think it's good to help the science progress. But these things you can do in your own home even, will change how you feel about yourself and how you feel about power, what kind of healing might be possible. Um, and again, I think that's our next step. So I'd invite people that are interested in this at all to play with a little bit, understand it can be a very positive spiritual and psychological path if you do it with a love energy in mind.
Yeah, we're
Um,
actually very interested in the program ourselves. So
Yes.
yeah, you may be
oh,
hearing from
good,
us after the show.
good, good.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
done hundreds of radio shows, and quite a few have said, I think I'm going to have to get that same creation and try it myself. And that's kind of fun when uh, they get to do that. Some go with the liquid lock book and handbook and meditation to go a little easier on the pocketbook to begin with, but enjoy that. So
Mhm.
you'd be more than welcome.
Thank
I,
you.
uh,
Well,
we like to have, it's kind of a whole family now.
Yeah.
while we have a little bit of time left, let me ask you, what is meditation to you? So I think this is a word that's used in different modalities, if you will, in different ways often. And
Yeah.
is there, what is meditation to you, and how do you recommend people meditate? Is it a clearing of everything, not thinking about anything, trying to let thoughts just pass? If you recognize them, let them go. Is it the focus of, like a yellow triangle, and just trying to keep the focus and attention on that,
Or being in your happy place.
being in a
Yeah.
happy place? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, many Western style meditations are more of the mind blanking, letting go of the thought, um, and centering on the breath, something like that to focus, but you're aiming for a state of a very still or blank mind. And paradoxically, within that, becoming more aware, more conscious of things beyond linear verbal thought. Monroe Institute, they tend to use a way where there are preparatory techniques initially done in say, a half-hour meditation. The first 5 or 6 minutes are spent on things that help to clear the mind and calm the body. But then if something comes up, it's considered potentially a form of guidance. So to give you an example, in a meditation, I might see a flash of a red wagon. In the traditional meditation of mind blanking, you'd let that go. In Monroe, you would pull on that and see there, and you might have the memory or experience of being 5 years old going down the hill in a wagon and remembering how it was to be 5 years old, totally free of responsibility. and then there may be a verbal message saying play more. And that happened to me when my first daughter was maybe 3 months old, and I was getting to feel too responsible, and it helped me really interact with her on a different level. It was win-win. So that would be more of a guided meditation often, visualization. So liquid luck, for example, I mentioned, would relax you first, get the mind blank, get the energies built, open the heart, have some good energy running through. And then there would be a guiding visualization to imagine this happiness, abundance, and etc. That might be useful for you. So I think you can use the word pretty broadly. Um, Contemplation also was what was taught to me in the monastery. Would be you would be out seeing the beauty of nature or looking at a candle flame, and you are mind quieting to the place where you become aware of the suchness, all it is, the infinite present moment. So you lose any sense of linear time, and you lose sense of boundaries. So you'd be in a oneness state with eternal present oneness state. All of that, I think, could be under this word we use pretty broadly, meditative. Um, and they're all appropriate at different times.
So they're
So
all useful.
if you were, yeah, if you were gonna, you wanted to see, you're going to the doctor next week, and by then you want the result to be that you do not need a root canal. Okay. You may contemplate over the weekend first, thanks to the teeth, thanks to your mouth, thanks to the energy body, thanks to all the help around you and support from angels, archangels, guides, moving your
Ancestors.
own energy. Yeah, moving your own energy and visualizing that tooth and that area of the mouth being in perfect health, and feeling the gratitude for that health, etc. And then when you go, we've had reports of this. People go Monday, and the endodontist says, "What are you here for? You don't need a root canal. There's nothing wrong." Where the dentist Friday had said, "This is definitely, you need the root canal. There's so much decay." So I would say what that person did over the weekend was meditate. Uh, but probably also good to just enter that suchness, openness, oneness type of meditation once in a while, without asking for anything. It's like, I know the Catholics talk about, in many Christian traditions, different kinds of prayer. There's supplicative, "Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz?" There's gratitude prayer, there's contemplative, there's many different forms. And I would recommend being pretty good at all of them, including just being in the void, everything and nothing, infinite potentiality place, that oneness point, because it's exquisitely healing to do that. And we all have that capability. Some people get to it different ways: drumming, walking in the woods, dance. Some people use substances like ayahuasca and stuff. I don't personally recommend that. I think it can be an opening to other realms, but it may not be positive long range.
Mhm.
And I've met many people who are meditators, using that word broadly, who say, "Joe, if I didn't meditate 20 minutes a day, I don't think I'd even be sane." And they might be very active, intuitive people with 3 or 4 businesses as an entrepreneur, but they take the time to center each day.
I agree with that.
And in this COVID time, my wife and I made a commitment to meditate every day about 4 o'clock. And after that, we don't watch broadcast news. We don't talk politics. And I could feel the letting go of the fears of the culture and stuff as we reset our energies. Because we're social animals, and there's a lot of agitation out there right now.
Sure is.
Meditation is a good way to disconnect. Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for answering that, because I think that is a confusion for a lot of people. They might be listening now. They might say, "Well, I want to start meditating," and they Google it, and then they get back, 20 different answers that
Right.
seem completely unrelated.
Yes.
And like, I don't know what to
Yeah.
do, you know. And
Yes.
I like the correlation there with COVID and the news, especially last year when this all kind of set in. I knew it was really
Hmm.
frustrating, and yeah, I kind of wish I had meditated more back then. We were, you know, just feeling that negativity, and I get to the point where I can't even watch
Yes.
Yeah.
the news, you know,
Yes.
because
It's quite
it's just so
toxic.
depressing. Yeah, very
Very
toxic.
much. Very negative. Everything
Yeah.
was always negative and fear.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of fear
Well,
and
I'd recommend that
doom and
person
gloom.
who would like to start, or even start when they've been meditating in the past but haven't in a while, to get something with the binaural beat and other sound technologies now. It's just a lot easier to, in 10, 15 minutes, begin to be in a meditative state and not have that frustration of trying to quiet your mind by yourself and not having much luck. It doesn't have to be as hard as it used to be 40 years ago to enter a meditative state. So
That's wonderful
hit my
technology, and
website.
you would want to
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
headphones or something like that, right? Because you have
Yeah, headphones
the
work real
frequencies.
well with that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Earbuds.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's your website again. That's you just said check this website.
Absolutely. It's
Sync creation,
www.syncreation,
Think. Yeah.
sync
syncreation.com.
creation,
For those of you that are listening to this on a
SYNC.
podcast, that's spelled
Yes.
SYNC creation, CREATION
Dot
.com.
com.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well,
And
we would love to thank
and
you
if
for
you
your
Google
your
Joe Gallenberger, I should come up. If you Google Liquid Luck, I come up
Yep.
pretty much a lot of places. So
Yep,
Yep.
Liquid Luck, and of course, the book that got me started with
innovate.
you was Inner
Yeah.
Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yeah.
actually was from your Jeffrey Mishlove interviews,
Yes.
which were
Ah,
Big
fascinating. We
fans.
love Jeff's show, and he does such a wonderful job
Jeff
out
is,
there, and has
He's
some
great.
of the best stuff
Yep.
I can come across on the
yeah.
internet as far as interviews. We
Yeah.
really look up to him.
Yes.
So that's
Have you guys seen the superpower film that just came out? It's
no.
10 episodes. You go to superpowerfilm.com, and they had all the episodes for free last week, and now you'd have to buy them, but they may have some other way to get in touch with them. And they had 40 people, Bruce Lipton, Dean Radin, myself. I'm in probably six or seven out of 10 episodes.
Oh
Wow.
But
wow.
it's a beautiful series on intuition and human potential. One communicating with animals, one for children and what potential is with children. So that's kind of my latest project I was in, and
That's
it was
wonderful.
kind of
Oh,
neat.
We're gonna
that is
definitely check that
excellent.
out.
Yeah, I just brought that up on my
Yeah,
computer. Look,
We're gonna put it on the
looks
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
cool. And of course, we're a week late, but that's okay. We got to talk to you directly,
yeah,
so we were actually
yeah,
very
Yeah.
lucky.
We're very lucky. We
yeah.
We
feel
really
very
appreciate it
fortunate to and grateful
and grateful.
and grateful.
Absolutely. And
Definitely to
Thank
speak
you.
with you,
My
and we thank
pleasure.
you.
we appreciate it.
Yeah.
So folks, go check out Dr. Joe Gallenberger at his www.syncreation.com, and also check out superpowerfilm.com, which I just
Yes.
brought up. Looks super interesting, and we'll probably be checking out ourselves right after the show.
Yes, we will.
I'd like to thank you for your time,
Okay.
Joe.
Thank you
We really
again. We
appreciate
Oh,
it.
you're
appreciate you.
welcome. You guys have a good rest of the weekend, huh?
Thank you.
Excellent.
You
We'll
as well.
try. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. Take care. Thank you. That was excellent. That was so fun. I'd just
It
like
was
to give out a quick shout out to our United Public Radio listeners out there, and thank Joe. And be sure to check out United Public Radio. I know a lot of you also listen on our other outlets, Bigfoot and the Bunny and Dark Horse Paranormal.
hmm
Do check those out as well. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube for Dark Horse Paranormal. And we stream to all those things, and you can go back and play this if you just caught a little bit of it, and it'll be up shortly. Um,
And thank you to all our viewers, especially Anne Marie Young,
yeah,
a friend of mine, and
Robert
Robert
Honings, and we
Honings.
actually had some Twitch crowd out there today, which was a first for us because the Twitch has been a little quiet. So thanks, guys, out there in
Yeah,
Twitch.
thank you so much.
We would like to go check out the Warren Museum as well. So do check out Dr. Joe Gallenberger, and have a great weekend, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks again. Bye bye.